Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. Gavin Shaw, Alex Wolf. We continue our mailbag series with a fun one, Alex. We rank the Knicks' best young talents.
Yeah, I got a fun question off our YouTube comments. So if you're watching on YouTube and want to ask us a question, feel free to do so. But in this episode, we'll be talking about 5 of the Knicks' young players and how they all rank out for how we would want them in 5 years, or rather how good they're going to be in 5 years. Next on Locked On Knicks in 5 seconds. No, I'm just kidding.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Five seconds later on the dot. You are Locked On Knicks, and today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. And we want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today. And every day we're now available on all platforms. That includes on YouTube. So go check us out there. But who's talking to you? I'm Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. He is Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of the Strickland, the greatest Knicks website in the whole wide world. And this only question for this episode comes to us from the YouTube, the greatest site for wasting your entire day. Unless you're watching Locked On Knicks, and it's not a waste. The question is from Jim Pugh. In 5 years, who will be the better player, Obi, RJ, Grimes, or Quickley? And Alex, because we're ambitious, we decided to take this a step further and rank all of them, and to keep with the 5 theme, add in another player, and that is Mitchell Robinson, because I think he belongs in that conversation as well. But I don't know about you. This is we did this over the summer. We do it like every few months or so. This is always incredibly difficult for me. And I think when we did it over the summer, I was like, 35 games in the next season, we'll have a much clearer view on the potential, the ceiling, the floor of each and every one of these guys. But Alex, this was incredibly difficult for me. And at least for 1 through 4, maybe 1 through 5, you could have talked me into essentially any order. And I think I could, I'd buy it at the very least as reasonable.
Yeah, it's really tough because particularly with like Obi and Mitch, I think there's like Mitch plays such a different role and position than the other guys that it's sort of tough to contextualize like how much would he mean to a like championship level team, let's say, versus say, you know, an actualized RJ Barrett or Quentin Grimes or Immanuel Quickley or even Obi Toppin. And then with Obi, it's like, how do we know? You know, there's just it unfortunately run into the same thing that we talked about in one of our Donovan Mitchell trade episodes over the summer, like right after the saga was over, where we were like, this was sort of one of the first failures of this regime in not forcing Tibbs to play some of these guys more, because you still don't know who these guys are after 2 years. And now with Obi, it's like 2.5 years, halfway through his 3rd year. And I still don't feel like we have too much better of a picture of what his whole career is going to look like. And, you know, that you can chalk that up to Randall's renaissance this year, but also, you know, there's been a severe reluctance by Tibbs to play Obi and Randall together, which I think would be a great combo. So it's kind of tough to evaluate Obi in that way. Do you think it would be most beneficial if we just make our lists first, like just lead hot, give our lists, and then just kind of work from the bottom all the way to the top?
Oh, interesting. I was thinking we could do a countdown 5 through 1, but I'm good with that. Just what is your top 5 then?
I think I still have RJ Barrett number 1. The second spot has become increasingly harder because I think if you had asked me prior to the season, I would have said Quickley. But now I'm kind of leaning Grimes, if I'm being honest, just because if I think about it in terms of like, who do I think is going to make the most money in their NBA career? Who will, you know, have a role pretty much no matter what on any team in the NBA for a very long time? I think it's Quentin Grimes. And then I think Quickley is my 3rd. And unfortunately, due to that context that I just mentioned, I think Mitch is my 4th and Obi is my 5th right now.
Very, very similar for me. I had Quickley first over the summer, and it's weird because I think in some ways he's dramatically improved his stock. But the fact that the element of his game that I thought was most special, his 3-point shooting, has taken a little bit of a nosedive and is looking increasingly like his rookie year might have been a bit of an outlier in terms of how good of a shooter he is. He is all the way down to 4th for me. So when I first started this exercise, which was about full transparency 2 hours ago, I had Quentin Grimes at first for like the first hour and a half of that. And then I chickened out and I put RJ Barrett first, Grimes is 2nd, Mitchell Robinson is 3rd for me. Immanuel Quickley is in 4th. You could on the right day, right game. If I just saw him go off for 30 points, you could talk me into him being 1st. And then Obi Toppin, who, Alex, I don't know about you. I think if you'd asked me after the first like 8 games of the season or so, I might have had him 1st. He is all the way down at 5th. And that is sort of the nature of the business. But let's start from the top. RJ Barrett, what have you seen from him this year, despite the early struggles and that they were really significant, that you still have him at number 1?
I just think it's the type of player that he is, right? And the role that he plays. You know, I still think that we even just saw this the other day, right? Like he came in and to be fair, we saw Quickley do this when there were all the injuries, when RJ and Brunson were both hurt. But we saw him come in and just soak up usage. And even if he was not his most efficient self in his first game back, the fact that he can come in and he can score 27, he can generate 6 free throws, he can do some initiation, he can run things with the second unit, and do it all at his size and you know, just general profile of player that I think is, if you had a more inventive coach than Tibbs, you could potentially play him from like 2 to 4 on the court. I just think that paints a potentially really interesting player over the course of the next 5 years. And I also still give him somewhat of an edge because he's still so young. You know, he's still, I think he has arguably developed himself the most into like the actualized version of himself, and has proved to be, even with his inconsistency at the beginning of the season, I think speaking generally over how he does over the course of each season, like if you kind of knock off that first month where he always is just terrible for some reason and look at the rest, I think that he has developed a reputation for consistency more so than the other guys. Whereas we will see multi-game stretches from like Quentin Grimes or Immanuel Quickley where they just really don't shoot the ball super well. And granted, they still do other things plenty well. And maybe that's sort of one differentiator where RJ sometimes lets it leak into the defensive end, which could be a problem. But I think there's just something really valuable about the way that he can soak up usage. And he's starting now, I think, to learn ways to make up for bad shooting nights by getting to the line more, by distributing more, and also by not turning the defense down at all. So I think that's why I still have RJ number 1 at this moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was looking this up before we started. Out of players in the NBA who have played at least 20 games 25 games and have played at least 20 minutes in those games, Grimes, Mitch, and IQ are all top 32 in the NBA in net rating out of the whole entire league. So on paper, you would say, all right, those are the 3 most impactful guys. And where it gets tricky is RJ fills a more valuable archetype, right, of a primary creator versus Quickley, who is like kind of a combo guard, kind of a 6th man, kind of a fill in the blanks guy. Grimes is sort of the most stereotypical 3-and-D player, plus like a little drive and dish ability that you will find in the NBA. Mitch is like quintessential rim running, rim protecting center. But all those guys do their archetypes like about as well as anyone in the NBA, right? Like Quickley, if he hadn't been starting so many games and had been getting consistent minutes off the bench, like there would be an argument for him as 6th man of the year. I don't know if he'd be the favorite, but he would certainly be in the conversation, especially with what he brings to the table defensively. Grimes, I've said, like, I think is as good of like a 3-and-D prospect as there is in the NBA. Mitch, arguably the best rebounder in the sport. And we can talk about in a little bit, arguably a depoy candidate. So how do you justify still having RJ Barrett ahead of those guys? And it's because the type of player he is still just so much more valuable and so much harder to find. And even if I'm of the opinion that he's on a trajectory right now to develop, maybe not into like the worst version of that, but like more of a lower tier primary than like an upper tier primary. And we can talk about what the implications of that would be for him as like a secondary guy. If he's like the second or third best player on a good team. I still think that's more valuable. And I want to continue on that train of thought. But Alex, people love podcasts, but they need jobs. Where's the best place to go if they want a job, or better yet, if they're in a hiring position, if they want to give someone a job?
Yeah, that's where LinkedIn comes in, and LinkedIn Jobs, of course. And if you're a small business owner or a hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. I haven't done a ton of hiring myself. However, I will say that as a job seeker, LinkedIn Jobs consistently puts the best jobs in front of me and the ones that I'm most interested to click on, and sometimes ones that I wouldn't have even necessarily thought to click on. So their algorithm works. It is easily, I think, the best one there, and does not put a bunch of like entry-level sales positions in front of you all the time like every other job search site does. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. They go beyond resumes. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, your company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. And LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all on one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Gavin, we're back, and I want to lead this segment. So I just did, while we were talking in that last segment, I did a little smidge of research and looked something up, because I remembered this tool that is available on 538, and it's a player projection tool. And funny enough, as it pertains to this exercise, it gives a 5-year market value projection for various players, and it's based off of some of their metrics. They use the Raptor metric, and it also uses wins above replacement, which they calculate in part using their Raptor metric. I'm curious, if you were to fathom a guess, how do you think it shakes down based off of the wins above replacement and subsequently how much you don't have to guess dollar amounts, but like how do you think these guys would rank out based off of the analytics like community aspect of it?
All right, wins above replacement, I'm gonna say Mitch, then Grimes. Well, Grimes didn't really play to start the year, so I guess I have to take that into account because it's total throughout the year. It's not like per game, unless it's win shares per.
They do projections going forward. So
got it. Okay, all right.
Ultimately, it gives you like a 5-year, or actually longer. It gives you like a 8-year projection from right now of what they think the guys are going to produce from now through then. But then it also gives you a 5-year dollar amount total of what they believe the player is worth on the open
Got it. All right. So I'll say for win shares projection, I'll say Mitch, then RJ, then Grimes, then IQ, then Obi. And then for dollar amount, I'll say RJ, then Mitch. No, then Grimes, then Mitch, then IQ, then Obi.
All right. I'm going to read them off. You might be surprised to hear these results. This, again, comes from 538 with their player projection tool. Immanuel Quickley leads the way.
Wow.
Projected at about 6 wins above replacement over the next number of seasons. His 5-year market value, according to 538, is $140 million.
Whoa.
And also his like category that they put him in is future all-star. Second place is RJ Barrett. Or no, I'm sorry. Second place is Mitchell Robinson. Projected about 4.5 to 5 wins above replacement. And he is projected or given a market value of $98.2 million over the next 5 years. RJ is third at about 3.5 WAR per season and has a $79 million market value. Quentin Grimes is actually 4th, although I would have thought he would have been higher too. But he is at about 2.5 WAR projected and a $59 million projected market value, which is quite low. That's only $12 million a season for him. And then Obi Toppin is projected at about 1 win above replacement and a $26.5 million market valuation over the next 5 years. So I'm sure that Leon Rose's son, who represents Obi Toppin, is not hoping that that is the case, and they hope to probably get much more money than that. But I found that to be kind of interesting. I remembered that tool as we were like starting recording, and it was like, oh, I'll go look it up real quick, and then literally remembered that the tool was like, oh, here's their 5-year valuation. I just thought it was too perfect to not share that.
No, it's totally fair. And I guess the only reason I would push back on that with RJ is just, I mean, you just got to look at the trajectory, right? Like youngest player on this list. To your point, like the efficiency in December took a rapid uptick, up to 46% from the field, 42.5% from three. You can go over the game logs, like just what he started doing as of like, I mean, it was the Kings game. It was December 9th. He went 9 for 18, 26 points, 9 for 21, 27 points, 8 for 17, 22 points, 9 for 20, 27, 10 for 19, 24, 8 for 19, 18, 11 for 19, 30, 14 for 20, 44, and then had the one bad game against the Sixers, at least from a shooting perspective, and then got hurt against Dallas. But that was a stretch of all-star level basketball from RJ Barrett. And you look across the board, and none of these other guys have produced like that offensively. Of course, it's a two-way game, and you could make a case that Quickley, Grimes, and Robinson all merit all defense consideration this year. And Grimes is obviously just such a sure thing, which is why I wanted to put him at number 1, where I'm like, all right, like he translates anywhere. He doesn't take anything off the table. And like, even if he doesn't get an ounce better than he is right now, he's in the league for 12, 13, 14 years. And RJ, like, I honestly, like, sometimes I think he's maxed out. Sometimes I think he could still be like an all-NBA guy down the road. It is so hard to tell. But for me, like, I don't really see a world where the other guys have the ceiling that RJ does. And that just by an inch keeps him in first place for me.
Yeah, I have the same rationale. Also, to go back to this 538 thing, I just looked at RJ's. They give you the 10 most comparable players to the player too, based off where their WAR was, their first few seasons or whatever, and what their projection was. Tell me this isn't one of the most eclectic lists you've ever heard of, featuring a ton of ex-Knicks, by the way. Michael Beasley, number 1, then Bernard King, then Brandon Ingram, then Andrew Wiggins, Jabari Parker, Jason Richardson, Carmelo Anthony, Bradley Beal, Thaddeus Young, and Marvin Williams. Just all over the place, which kind of is how I feel about how things could go for RJ. If he does not start improving his efficiency and stuff sometime soon, I could see him going the way of early to mid-career, Michael Beasley, Andrew Wiggins, guys of that ilk that could score the ball but couldn't do it efficiently. They just never had that thing click with them where they became like a true efficient scorer in the NBA that became like, a multi-time all-star or whatever. But I could also see a trajectory where he ends up like Brandon Ingram, who sort of struggled a little bit at first and then really found his footing in about his 4th or 5th year and started producing, the way that a top 3 pick should. I could see him, kind of having a trajectory almost like Wiggins, where he eventually settles into a certain role and then becomes sort of a star in his role, and maybe an all-star out of it or something. I could also see a world where he's like Bradley Beal, who was like super young when he came in the league and took a little while to get that efficiency figured out and then eventually turned into like an efficient 25 point per game scorer. So he's one of the biggest mystery boxes, but also I still think has the highest ceiling. We could probably squeeze all the rest of the guys in the next segment. But Gavin, if you wanted to bet on some stuff, maybe some futures, maybe something about RJ Barrett. I don't know if you can go multiple seasons in the future. It would be cool if you could bet on their 5-year earnings.
Yeah.
But if you want to bet on some slightly more reasonable things, where might someone go?
Yeah, reasonable is the name of the game at betonline.net, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and the World Cup. We've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. What I like to go for are like the NBA daily. So tomorrow night, the Orlando Magic 5.5-point underdogs against the Utah Jazz. I made everyone money, if you listen to me, telling you to bet the Jazz over the Clippers. Let's stick with it. I think the Jazz blow out the Orlando Magic, just a much more cohesive team. I think that is a 10-plus point game. So lay some money down on the Jazz and head to the website today, or use your mobile device to do that or learn more. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, Alex, let's run through the rest. For me, I'm sure it was for you, 2 through 4 was very, very challenging, because I think Mitchell Robinson, there's a case for Immanuel Quickley, but I think probably Mitchell Robinson is the best player of the group right now. He is, I think, 12th based on the criteria I put in the NBA in net rating at the moment, which is absurdly good. There's a strong case to be made that he is the best rebounder in the league. It might have been the Athletics' own Fred Katz, but he actually did get a vote or two for that in the NBA midseason survey of the best rebounders in the NBA. And is an absolutely dynamic defender, and him and Grimes are quite the duo on that end of the floor. Quickley is easily the best creator out of this group. Unlike Grimes, has the capability to be a primary ball handler. And my fear in having Grimes first, or out of this group anyways, Alex, is that I don't know if, like Quickley, he could ever be a primary, or like Mitch, he's ever going to be the best in the NBA at what he does. But the reason I had him here is Desmond Bane. And I went to Desmond Bane's basketball reference page, and I said, all right, what would Quentin Grimes have to do to be Desmond Bane? Right now this season, Desmond Bane is averaging 21 points per game. Is a little higher before he got hurt. 5 rebounds, 4 assists, right? He's shooting 43.5% from the field, 41% from 3 on 7.5 attempts per game. And he's shooting 89% from the line. And he's taking, he's 4 for 9 every night from 2. He's 3 for 7.5 from 3. That is like pretty similar, just on higher volume, to what Quentin Grimes is doing this year. Like if you look at Grimes's numbers, he is on 2-point shots. I'll do it per 36 just to make it a little more even. He's 4.6 for 9.9, 2.4 for 6.4. So that's easier. 46%, quite a bit better than Bane at 2-point range. 37.5% from 3. Not quite the shooter that Bane is, but over the last month, he's been closer to 41% from distance after a slump when he started the year and came back early. And he's an 80% free throw shooter. So and he's 2 years younger than Bane is. So I think that's the trajectory for him. And that is just such a scalable player, such a useful player, and an iota higher than that, and he's an all-star. So I just think it is less complicated to fit him in than it is to fit Quickley in with another team. And Mitchell Robinson, I think, is essentially who he's going to be.
Yeah, I think I'm totally with you. I think there really is a case that Mitch could be, as of right this second, the best of that grouping of players. I also think there's the best chance that Mitch has the least room to improve, which is where this like comes into that whole 5-year thing. Cause we were asked, which player will be the best in 5 years. And maybe that was why Mitch was even left off to begin with, because it sort of feels like Mitch is starting to actualize the player that he's going to be. And that's fine if he is, because he's a really great player right now. And he's playing the best basketball of his career. He is, I think, for my money, the best rebounder in the NBA, because of, if you watch the amount of rebounds that he's creating for guys like Randall by just being the most nasty box outer in the NBA is unheard of. And then, obviously his rim protection abilities, his ability to shut down some of the best centers in the game when he's at his best, like a Joel Embiid. I think that he's probably the best of those 3 right this second. That said, I'm with Grimes at number 2 as well. And the reason is it's partly size profile, and it's partly, like you said, like, I guess the other thing too, Grimes is on his way as far as efficiency goes. Quickley, I still worry. And I mean, I know that people love to be like, well, look at how good he is otherwise, though. He impacts the game. And like, if he ever figures out the efficiency, then he'll be amazing. And it's like, yeah, but he still hasn't quite figured it out yet, and he's still so up and down with like the shooting percentage of like one game he'll give you 7 of 8 from 3, and the next game he'll give you 1 of 12, and there's just no rhyme or reason to it sometimes. And I think that's the thing that gives me the most pause with him still. And, makes me think, like, I don't know that I would put him ahead of Grimes at the moment, because as you said, it's a pretty thin line between what Grimes is doing now, and if he can keep that up on higher usage and keep perfecting the things that he's good at right now, I mean, he might be a $25 million a year player, by the time that he reaches the end of his rookie deal, considering he's only on his second year right now. If he just continues, just builds on what he has right now, which is, fantastic defender, like game busting defender, if we're being honest, like he's that good at times. And then on top of that, he is also a very good 3-point shooter that's starting to inch closer towards being like an elite shooter with the shot diet and everything, but then also is now showing this ability to put the ball on the floor and get to the rack and make quick decisions and to pass. And when you consider all those things together, yeah, he might not ever be like a Luka type, which I think is also another thing that moves, RJ up. And not saying that he's going to be Luka, but a guy that can initiate for himself and others. Like Grimes might never be that guy on the NBA team, even though we saw that in Summer League. But even if he just perfects all those things he's really good at, that's a $150 million contract type player. If you could do all that stuff elite, play great defense and score efficiently, and use your ability to bend the defense by scoring to set up open teammates for shots, like that's a really great player. So I think that's why I have him there, and it's mostly just the efficiency concerns with Quickley, but the margins are pretty razor thin between those two, between Grimes and Quickley for me. And then Mitch a little step below that, because I wonder if he's peaked already, he's the closest to what his peak will be based off of just what his game is. And then unfortunately that leaves Obi for both of us at the bottom of the list right now.
Yeah. And last thing on Grimes, I think the passing is a key point, because Quickley is just ahead of him right now in that capacity as a creator. But the flashes you see from Grimes, like it just makes you wonder if he gets more time on the ball. And like one great stat, courtesy again of the Athletics, Fred Katz point out in his article this week, as of 4 days ago, Grimes was first in the entire NBA in blow by rate, out of 174 players who have as many drives to the paint as he does this season. So that is encouraging to me for how his athleticism and his explosiveness could translate as he continues to get more and more on ball reps over the course of his career. Like I think there's some untapped potential for him as a driver and an attacker and a finisher. And look, Quickley, I mean, look, he's been really good as a starter this year. What are the, it's like 20 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, like couple steals a night when he starts. And his 2-point percentage, like if we're going to talk efficiency with him, we have to say his 2-point percentage went from 40 to 45 to 50. That is on a linear positive trajectory. And if his threes had just stayed the same as they were his rookie year, he would be 1 for me. I don't think it would be that close. And by the end of the season, he might be a 37% 3-point shooter. That's just how thin the margins are here. But yeah, Obi Toppin last. I don't know if it's due to any fault of his own, Alex. I think the Knicks have just butchered his development, honestly, by turning him into a standstill 3-point shooter. And he is bearing the wrath of kind of what Tom Thibodeau does to all bigs, seemingly, where they just have to slot, unless they're Julius Randle and they're so obviously like a primary kind of ball handler. Like he just wants to slot them into certain roles. Like we see it with Isaiah Hartenstein, but that's kind of what's happened to Obi throughout all of his career. And like anything Obi's gotten, it's sort of been on his own merit. It hasn't been because the coach has made his life any easier. And we heard rumors of like the Pacers potentially being interested. I think if he ends up there with, I know we love to hate the guy, but with Tyrese Halliburton, like there's a world where like second half of this season, as soon as that, Obi Toppin is like an efficient 20-point scorer in the NBA. And we're like, oh, maybe he's like the best guy out of this group. But the Knicks have, I think, just bungled his future in the way they haven't with these other guys. And you combine that with him being I believe the oldest guy. Yeah, he's a month older than Mitchell Robinson, the oldest guy on this list. I think he has to be last for me.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any, like, unlike Mitch, where I think, his age plays in, because I just think, but also just the way that he's developed throughout his career, I think has led to me thinking like he might have peaked. Obi, I don't necessarily know if he's that close to it, despite being the oldest. like he's been on a weird development trajectory his whole life. You know, he like played junior college for a couple years and then had like a huge growth spurt and finally got into D1, then is winning the, National Player of the Year when he's like 23 years old, which is older than most guys, but showed a significant amount of development because he, had that late growth spurt. So, I still look at him almost like he's like a 23-year-old player rather than like 25 or whatever he is right now. That said, yeah, I'm with you. Like as of right now, it's impossible to say. And I'm just more inclined to think that based off the roles that they play, that the other guys, so based off the roles that the first three guys play, that's why they're ahead of Obi. And then based off the fact that Mitch is already, I think, so close to being an actualized version of the best version of himself, Obi is far away on all those fronts. And to your point, it's not necessarily anything that's his fault. It's kind of just the team that drafted him. And the fact that, I mean, in 2020 to 21, Randall turned things around when it was pretty obvious that Obi was drafted to replace him. And the Knicks were probably going to get rid of him that year until he started playing as well as he did. And then they said, well, guess we can't do that. And, then obviously the rest is history. We're in the fourth year of Julius Randle with more to come. And it seems like he's entrenched because he's playing really well right now. And Julius certainly doesn't deserve to play less minutes at, just to get Obi more minutes at this point in the season. But I think under a different coach, you would see them played more together, which could potentially increase Obi's value, especially in the modern NBA where so many teams use looks like that. But Tom Thibodeau's the coach, and he doesn't seem particularly enthused with the idea of using that lineup unless it's literally the only thing he can do, or if his job's on the line and he feels like he needs to do it for that reason. So is what it is. It's no knock on Obi, but yeah, I've got him at 5th on the list in this top 5 for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I will say defense is most concerning for Obi Toppin out of anyone on this list.
Yeah.
So on that pleasant note, no Obi hate, love Obi here. We'll wrap up this one, but let us know in the comments. We'll make it the pinned comment on this one. Who do you think the top 5 are? How would you rank these guys? And then we will be back with a game recap for you on Monday. So until then, be good. We'll talk to you soon on Locked On Knicks.